So this is Sarah Milligan with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Today's date is February 5th, 2016. I am at Eastern Oklahoma State College with Trish McBeath. And we are going to talk a little bit about her time at OSU and her time since OSU. And this is for the Cowboy in Every County Oral History Project. So first off, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? If you have siblings, who your parents are.
Okay.
All that good stuff.
Well, I am from Quinton, Oklahoma. I was born and raised there. It's a small town, a rural town in Pittsburgh County. Population around 1,100, I think. That's where my parents are from there, and where I was raised along with my brother, Lance, who also is a OSU graduate. So we lived there all our lives until we went off to college. So we're both graduates of Quinton High School.
Were your parents from Quinton?
Yes, my mother was actually born in California, but she came to the Quinton area during high school and met my dad. So they met in high school. My dad is originally from this area. He's from Brooklyn, which is over by Lake Eufaula Dam, and lived there his entire life.
All right. Okay, so you mentioned that you and your brother stayed in Quinton until you left to go to college. So maybe talk a little bit about your decision to go to OSU.
Okay. When I was in high school, thinking about my college options, a lot of my classmates were planning to attend a two-year community college and stay close to home and just live at home and commute back and forth to school. But I was ready to bust out of my small town life and try something new. So I decided I wanted to attend Stillwater. I had some family friends that had attended there. No one in my family had been to college. My parents both graduated high school, and later in life my mother attended some banking schools. She's a banker. But they did not attend college traditionally right out of high school. So I was really the first generation in my immediate family to make that choice to go to school. And I had visited campus with those family friends before at football games and that sort of thing, and just fell in love with the town and fell in love with the campus. And it was really about the only school that I applied to. So when I got accepted, I was thrilled, and my decision was made. I didn't really even visit hardly any other campuses.
Well, how did your parents feel about you going to college?
They were excited. I think they were maybe a little nervous, because I had, of course, lived my entire life in a small rural town, so to move 3 hours away made them a little nervous. But they know I'm pretty headstrong, and once I get something in my head, there's no turning back. And actually, when I was a senior and I had already made that decision and started talking about where I wanted to go to school, I had some people in the community that told me, you have no business going to OSU. You really need to stay closer to home. You're not going to do well there. It's too big of a campus. Start small and then go. Well, that just made it. I'm stubborn. That just made it even worse. So I said, no, I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna make it. And so once I set my mind to it, I was set.
So is it not very common for students from the Quinton area to go to a four-year college straight out of high school like OSU?
Not as many. Most of my classmates at the time started off at a two-year community college or went straight to work. I think I was one of only 3 students in my graduating class that went directly to a 4-year college or university.
Yeah. How big was your graduating class, roughly?
33 students. Yeah.
That's
pretty small.
Yeah.
Pretty small.
Yeah, but even the ratio of students that went on is still tiny.
Yes.
Even with that few students. So what I'm hearing is that a big interest for you was because you felt comfortable on the campus, because you had a reason to be there, and
yes,
kind of knew your way around.
And I had some older friends that had already spent 2 years at a community college, and we're heading to Stillwater. So I thought at least there would be some people on campus that I would know if I needed them. Some of those same family friends too. I had a son and daughter that were there at the same time. They were adults and working, but they were there in the community. So I just felt like if I needed help or anything, that I could have those people to turn to, but I pretty much was going on my own.
Well, what I didn't even ask this, but when was this? Like, when did you start going to OSU? I
graduated high school in 1994, so I started in fall 1994.
1994. Knowing more about sports and campus and sort of people that you knew went there, did you have any idea what you were going to major in whenever you went up there?
I did. I knew pretty much what I wanted to do. When I was in high school, this is kind of a funny story. When I was in high school, I played on the first softball team, like organized softball team that our school had. That was my senior year, and we played, summer league, but I was an athlete and really into athletics, and I was on that first team. And we did really well that year for being our first fast pitch softball team in the history of the school. But nobody was writing about us. None of the local newspapers. I kept looking for stories about this Quentin Lady Savages that were winning some games in their first year, and nobody was writing about us. So my high school counselor at the time, she was also my English teacher previously. She said, why are you mad? Just do something about it. You can write a story and send it into the newspaper. So I did, just our little community newspaper, sent a story in, and they published it with my byline, and I was like, wow, there's my name in the newspaper. So I was hooked, and I knew that I wanted to do something with writing. I just wasn't exactly sure. So I talked, of course, to admissions counselors and told them what I was interested in, and they said that journalism and broadcasting really sounds like the degree program that you want to go into, but take some of your basic courses first, and then, as you go along, you'll start taking some intro classes in journalism. And once I took those classes, I loved it, so I never changed my major. Once I set journalism and broadcasting as my major, I earned my degree in 4 years.
Right. So what were some of the classes that you enjoyed while you were there?
I really loved that first intro to journalism class that I took, and my professor was Dr. Doug Drummond, and I just remember one of the very first assignments that we had was to find a fellow student and tell a story about them, interview them for a story, and write it and tell it. Well, this was like early on in the semester, one of our very first assignments, and we've turned in those assignments, and it's the next class, and I'm sitting in class, and he's kind of telling us, well, some of you did pretty well, and some of you didn't. Let's take a look at some examples, and we'll learn from them. Well, one of the first examples he pulls up and puts on the projector is my story. And I was just like, I loved it. I was so proud of myself. So I just going along through his class, he would meet with me and show me, what I was doing well or what I needed to work on. And we had a lab that went with that class. And he would always encourage us to find, we would come in and like 3 or 4 of our students would be writing the same story about the event that was going on campus or whatever. So he taught me about trying to find different angles to tell a different side of the story that maybe the reader's not expecting. And he finally, when that first class was over, he really encouraged me and said, you're a strong writer. You really need to look at maybe going to work for the collegian student newspaper, which, I hadn't even thought of. At that point, I was still young and early and hadn't really even considered that. So he made me think about it, and I applied, and I got hired as a reporter for the Akali. And so I just feel like I owe a lot to him and to that class for really getting me started on that path. And he spent a lot of years as an assistant district attorney in Tulsa, and now he's a district judge there. So he's not even teaching or in the journalism field now, but I see his name in the newspaper in the Tulsa World occasionally, and I remember him fondly.
Have you ever sent him a note or anything like
I
that?
haven't. That's something I should probably do. Tell him what an influence he had on me early in my school years.
Yes, I don't know. I was just curious.
Yeah.
So you went and worked for the Akali. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Okay. I spent a year as a reporter for the Akali, and I covered just general news one semester, and then the second semester they asked me to cover sorority and fraternity stories, which was kind of funny because I was not a member of a sorority or a fraternity, so I think that's probably why they chose me, to have a balanced view. So I covered a lot of their events in the second half of that first year as a reporter. And then the second year, which would have been my senior year working for the Akali, I went over to the advertising side. Even though my degree was in journalism and broadcasting, the emphasis area I had chosen was advertising. So I really wanted to see both sides of the newspaper. I wanted to write as a reporter and then also see the more creative side as well. So I served as a sales representative for a year and went out and sold ads, and then would come back in and create them and get them ready for display in the newspaper. It was a great time. We had so much fun those years working for the Akali. It was a lot of hard work, but it was a lot of fun too.
What was fun about it?
Just being in the ad room or being in the newsroom or the ad room, depending on when I was there. There was just all this energy because you're on deadline, or there's some story that's going on campus that everybody's wanting to know about. So you're trying to get interviews scheduled or whatever, and this is all, of course, happening while you're still juggling your classes. So we were all busy, but we all worked late nights there and had a lot of fun together, just spending time together. It's a big, the newsroom at the time was a big room, so it was the ad room, and there was maybe 10 desks right in the room. So everybody's just right there together, you're on top of each other, and you're working, and you're trying to make a deadline, so lots of late nights and,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with working a job like the Akali, that it sounds like kept you pretty busy even in the evenings. Did you have much room for social life?
Yeah, I did. I was part of the advertising club, of course. That was one of the student organizations that I was involved in, but I'm also a big basketball fan. Of course, I love football too. I went to all the football games while I was a student there, but I joined the Spurs, which is the basketball spirit group, I guess you'd call it. It's still there, I know, but they basically help. It's a group of students that help with the basketball program. If recruits come to campus, they give them a tour of campus and show them around, or they sell programs to raise money to attend. For example, I was part of that organization for 3 years, and we went to the last Big 8 basketball tournament championship, and then the first Big 12. That's what happened while I was there. So we went to those tournaments and just kind of supported the team and cheered for them. But that was a lot of fun. Being in Gallagher, when there was so much energy and the place was full. This was, of course, before the renovation, and just so many nights spent there. Of course, Eddie Sutton years and cheering on the basketball team. My freshman year was the year that they went to the Final Four with Big Country, so that was a lot of fun. Big basketball and sports fan, and that was a lot of great memories attending those games. The old Lewis Field back before the renovations to the football stadium that they have now. I can remember so many games sitting there in the student section in the rusted bleachers, and our team, back then, our team wasn't the same team we had now, and but we were there, we were faithful, sitting out there with our orange on.
Was it still pretty packed at that point?
I think it was. The student section was pretty packed. It's not like it is now, because they didn't have the tent city. They didn't have the students that camped out overnight to get tickets, because I probably would have been one of them right in the middle of that. But we didn't do that back then. And the tailgating that goes on today, we didn't, there was some tailgating, but they're really not like it is now. So it's just a completely different atmosphere when you go to a game today versus when I was a student there. It's just night and day difference, which is great. I love to see all the new people that are coming and the beautiful new stadium that we have, and all the people out tailgating on campus. I think it's wonderful, and all the new traditions that they've started with the walk that the football players do prior to the game, and the Alumni Association has their big spirit rally before the game. So we participate in that stuff, and we didn't get to do that as students. They didn't have all that. So it's pretty fun to go back now and participate as an alum.
How often do you get back now to go see games and things?
It depends. We're finding that as our children get older, it's a little harder to keep up with their schedule and make that 3-hour drive for a football game. So we get back at least once a year, every football season, every basketball season, and baseball season. Try to get up and see at least one game a year. And then we may just visit Stillwater and walk around campus when we're off in the summer or on Christmas break when nothing's really going on, just to walk around campus, eat at Eskimo Joe's or whatever, just to come visit.
Yeah. Well, and we'll come back to some of that a little bit later too,
Okay.
but back to whenever you were in school there. So it sounds like one of the big influences was the Akali. What's the difference between what you know about the Akali now and how it was whenever you worked there? Like, what are some of the changes?
Well, back when I was a student reporter, the Akali was a regular sized newspaper, and it was printed every day, 5 days a week, not on the weekends. And since then, and actually it was also the Daily Collegian was the name of the newspaper. Now everyone called it the Akali, but the official name and the masthead was the Daily Collegian. So now things have changed, just like the newspaper industry is changing. They've come along with those changes as well, being either forced to or just trying to keep up with the changing times. But I understand it's officially called the Akali now, and it's a tab instead of a full newspaper. And I believe they only print maybe 1 to 2 a week. I'm not really sure on that, but it's not a daily newspaper anymore. So it's a little sad to see those changes, and I can completely understand keeping up with sort of the industry standard and how that industry is changing. But it's a little sad to think back of how it used to be and how it is now.
Was it tough for you because it was a 5-day-a-week publication? Was it tough for you to keep up with that sort of schedule and your classes and your homework and all of that stuff?
It was tough, but it was manageable. I can just think, when I think back about my college days, I can't believe how little sleep I was able to function on. You just do what you have to do. You work and you go to class, and you stay up late and you study, and you get up in the morning and you do it all again. And I wouldn't change any of that. But of course, if I think about it now as an adult and trying to keep up with that schedule, that would be nearly impossible. There's no way I could do it. But I guess you're young, and you just manage.
Yeah. So did you live off campus or a combination?
My very first year as a freshman, I lived in Wilhelm North on the top floor, 12th floor, and that was a lot of fun. I sort of resisted living on campus. That was just going off to college was going to be a big enough transition. The thought of having a roommate and living on a floor with a bunch of other girls, I was frankly probably just scared of that transition. And so I kind of fought it a little bit. And I had these older friends that were 2 years older than me that were going to be living and going to school, living off campus and going to school there. So I sort of petitioned the university to live off campus, that I wanted to live with them. And they had a pretty strict rule that for all freshmen need to live on campus. And so I wasn't really happy about that at first. But within just a week or two, I realized that was the best decision that could have happened for me. Living in the dorms and being around all those other students that were going through all the same transitions that I was really helped. And I made, of course, a lot of friends that are still friends. And you just build those relationships because you're just right there together going through all the same things at the same time. And I can see that now, thinking back of how different my experience would have been had I lived off campus that first year. When I think about my own children going to college, I want them to live on campus. And I'd be great with them to live on campus their entire time that they're there. But yeah, that was a good year. I did move off campus for my sophomore through my senior year. I lived off campus with one of the girls that I met on my dorm floor. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of fun, but I wouldn't trade those memories of living in Wilham that first year. And Wilham North is gone now. It's gone. They've torn it down to make room for the new campus housing that they have, which is more of a suite style. And I think that's interesting too. That would probably be a good fit for a lot of students too.
Yeah, they're making have made a lot of transitions in the on campus living in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And yeah. So what were some of the things that you all did in your free time then on campus or in Stillwater? You know, did you spend time on campus? Were you out and about town? Did you just go to the movies and come back home? I mean, what were some of the things you did?
Well, we did a lot of we just did a lot of staying at home or in the dorm room or home, you know, inviting friends over. I mean, we did go out, but a lot of college students, of course, don't have the money to go out and do a lot of things. So we just made up our own entertainment, whether it was watching videos at home or whatever. We did go out to Boomer Lake a lot and walk, just take walks or play frisbee or we did a lot of that. Even play catch with softball. So yeah, we did a lot of walking just around campus. That was always a good stress relief, I found, just to go get outside, get out of your room, put the books down for a little while, and just go walk around on campus. And of course, we'd go over to the Colvin Center, play basketball or work out. That was a good stress reliever as well. And I played intramural sports too while I was there. So I played basketball and flag football and softball. So we had plenty to do to keep us entertained. We didn't always need to go to the movies or go out to find something to do. Did
by that point were people still going to the Strip down by Theta Pond?
Yes, they were. When I met my now husband at OSU and we were dating, his college roommate actually owned the Wormy Dog on the Strip. So we did spend some time on the Strip, and that was always fun. There's lots of good memories that are probably not appropriate for the video to talk about, but yeah, I think it was still popular back then, the Strip, and Joe's, of course, was always popular, even in my day, to go on a Thursday night or out to the Tumbleweed. They still packed a lot of people in at the Weed back then, too. And that was one of my, when I worked at the Akali, that was one of my advertising accounts, was Tumbleweed. So I always knew what was going on that week just because I'd put their ad together. So, yeah, we spent time out there too.
That's a good way to stay informed. First information. So hold on, let me think. I wanted to get back to not just like the semester you spent doing the Greek life. So were there things that, because you weren't in Greek life, I'm just wondering sort of like what were some of the things that you covered in that? Did you get to know people that way, or was it, I don't know, I'm just curious about that sort of position.
Well, yeah, it was interesting for me for being sort of an outsider to the whole Greek system and the Greek life and how it worked, because I didn't know a lot about it. I can remember two stories in particular that I wrote were about house mothers that were retiring. And so that relationship was really interesting to me, that there were these two women for separate sororities, lived in that house and spent a lot of time in that house taking care of those students or looking after them or whatever and building a relationship with them. So then when they were retiring, the young ladies that lived in the house, the students were, of course upset and sad, and, they felt like they were losing a mother figure in their life. And so that kind of dynamic was interesting to me, and not a way that I had really thought of Greek life before. I could see how that would be helpful for a student to have that sort of adult parent type role model close by, because so many students like myself go up on your own, and you're figuring things out all by yourself. And so I could definitely see the benefit of that, but it was definitely not anything that I had been exposed to while I was there. So I did learn a lot about Greek life, and a lot of the community support type programs, community service type programs that they do and are involved in, that I wasn't as familiar with. It's, you think of the stereotypical Greek life that are partiers and that sort of thing. It's not all about that, is basically what I learned in the lesson I took from covering that beat.
Well, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I wonder that too, because you mentioned your parents were a little bit nervous, and the other people maybe were more nervous about you coming from Quinton to Stillwater, and how big of a switch that would be. Do you remember your first couple of months there, and how you felt about making that transition?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. There's a lot of different emotions, of course. I was so excited to go out and have this sense of freedom and independence, that I was going to be on my own. I was scared and nervous. Of course, you wonder if people are going to like me, or if I'm going to make friends. And then going to class for the first time and just seeing how many people were in that class, that was a little overwhelming. That's enough to make you kind of pause and think, wow, I'm used to, there being anywhere from 15 to 20 people in my class, to now I've got, one of 100. So that was a really different experience. But one of my memories, and I have told this story a lot of times, I've gone back to Quinton and spoken to the different classes, or at my church they have a senior breakfast every year, and I've talked to those seniors about my experience going to college. And I always tell them this story, that I was so determined to go to college and do well, and then I got there, and the very first test I took was in a geography class, my very first exam for college life, and I failed. I made an F on that test, and it was just this huge wake-up call. Like, you're determined to succeed, but are you doing any of the work or any of the things that you need to be doing to do it? Because of course I was having fun and meeting new people and going to events on campus, but I had to learn how to study. I had to learn how to really prepare myself and take notes and study in a way that I hadn't done before. So that just made it even more determined. I thought, I'm not gonna fail. I'm not gonna go back and say, have people say, see, I told you, you should have listened to me. That just wasn't gonna happen. And I was also afraid that my parents were gonna make me come home. I sure didn't want that to happen either. So that first test was just a huge wake-up call, and I of course learned how to study. I learned how to go to the library and seek out help if I needed tutoring help in certain classes, and I did just fine after that. I always maintained a high 3-point grade point after that. So that was another learning, another transition that I had to kind of grow into, was how to study from a high school level to a college level.
Do you find that was something that was common with peers that you may have had at the time that were also from rural areas? Did you have people to talk about that with, I guess?
Well, that's interesting, because really the friends that I made were all from larger cities. They were, one of my very best friends was actually from Stillwater, and she chose to live in the dorms and wanted to, kind of have a little bit of that independence as well. But they were from Guthrie and Oklahoma City and Stillwater, all towns and cities much larger than Quinton. So I really didn't have someone there that was like me, or who hadn't at least been there or been through it before. My friends that were older that were there at the time have, of course, had 2 years of college under their belt at that point, so they kind of knew what to expect and what it was going to take to do college level coursework, and I had to kind of figure that out on my own. And so yeah, it was a little bit different coming from such a small rural school, and the expectations of what I could do to pass and make good grades in high school versus college.
It's interesting. Well, you can feel free, if there's other things that you want to talk about with campus or your program at all, I mean, you can jump in and let me know. But I'm also wondering, you completed your degree in 4 years. So what happened once you had that piece of paper, and did you leave? Did you go continue on higher education? Did you go find a job? What happened?
Well, one thing I joke about and laugh about is that one of my biggest regrets in life was that I finished college in 4 years. Because I really truly loved my time in Stillwater, and I loved my experience. And my parents in no way pressured me or anything to finish. I think that was just an internal drive that I wanted to get done. My younger brother is exactly 4 years younger than me, and I knew that he would be coming up right behind me. And I was fortunate, very fortunate and blessed that my parents paid for my college graduation or college degree. And I of course worked to help supplement expenses, living expenses, and I did have a few scholarships to help out with that as well. But they made a point to save and to make education a priority for my brother and I, that we really were fortunate. We didn't have to take out student loans to pay for college. So I think that's probably what drove me to finish in 4 years, which is not quite the norm anymore. But I took a lot of summer classes and that sort of thing to make sure I got through in time.
Yeah. And that was one of my questions, how financially, did that work out? And it's interesting sort of in any college, but even OSU, to look at sort of decade by decade what you needed to have in place before you could actually go, and what was expected of you as far as finances. And so that's interesting.
Yes, and of course, in the almost 20 years, I guess 20 years since I've been there, things have changed dramatically with the cost of higher education, and tuition rates continue to go up, and it's a little unnerving how expensive it is. But being someone that works in higher education, I can see that, and I can see why it is, unfortunately. But I can also see the value in it as well. And so as parents, I want to do that same thing for my child or my children, and I want them to be able to go and study and concentrate on their degree and not have to worry about finances. And I think that's going to be hard for a lot of people, unfortunately. It's just going to be hard. It's going to be a sacrifice, but it's worth it. I think it's worth it.
So, what happened when you finished? What was your game plan after 4 years?
Well, after 4 years, I graduated in May of 1998, and I had done an internship the summer before at an advertising agency in Oklahoma City. And I think that was probably a really good experience for me to kind of learn what the real world, get a little taste of that outside of school.
Was that something your department helped set up, or so you found on your own?
No, they helped me set up. My advisor, well, actually in the journalism building there, they always had an area where they posted internships and job opportunities. So I always kept a good eye on that. But that was the summer before my senior year. There was a job posting, and so I talked to some of my professors, they think this would be a good opportunity for me. It was an unpaid internship, which is always a little difficult, but they really thought that that would be a good experience for me, and of course something good to put on my resume so that when I was looking for a job after graduation, I would have that to fall back on. So that was actually a pretty good experience. I lived in Stillwater, but drove to Oklahoma City 3 days a week, and worked at Jordan Associates, and spent the summer there. So then following graduation, I actually had a job offer before I graduated. So that's always nice to have when you know exactly what's going to happen right as soon as you earn that degree and cross that stage. So I probably like the week after graduation, I packed up my apartment and moved to Oklahoma City and started work the very next week at Ackerman McQueen, which is an advertising agency there in Oklahoma City too. And that was my first job ever really that wasn't a part-time job. That was my first full-time career job, and I worked in the traffic department, which is pretty much the lowest that you can, the entry level lowest you can get. But I was there for a total of 3.5 years, and I slowly worked my way up, and actually during that time my husband had a job offer in Kansas City, and we moved, but my Ackerman allowed me to keep my position. I worked from home for some time when we lived in Kansas City during that time. So it was a good experience. It was a lot different than I expected it to be. So I'm sure that's the case for a lot of new graduates.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you met your husband at OSU.
Mm-hmm.
What year in school were you? How old were you whenever you all met?
Let's see. We met in January 1997. So I was a junior at that time. And how we met, it was the first day of class in that spring semester in January, and we were in, Dr. Ben Lee had a behavioral marketing class, and we just happened to sit next to each other, and Dr. Lee asked us, our first assignment in the class was turn to your neighbor. You've got 2 minutes to find out as much as you can about them, write it down, and then you're going to present to the class, introduce the person next to you. So the person next to me was Trish McBeath, and I interviewed him, really shortly. He did too. We found out our birthday is only a day apart, and just, kind of that. He had never heard of Quinton, Oklahoma. Imagine that. He was from Tulsa, so he was a city boy. And so we introduced each other, and then after that first day of class, it's like, well, I know this person. That was probably Dr. Lee's whole intent. You know someone in class, so I just naturally sat beside him because I knew him. And so we took that class together and kind of became friends. We worked on a group project together, so we would see each other outside of class. And when that class was over and it was time to come back the following August, we decided to enroll in another class together. It was the next marketing class. And so again, for that whole semester, we were friends again. And then, so in December, that would have been in December of '97, the Cowboys went to the Alamo Bowl. So we were in San Antonio, and we ran into each other in San Antonio. I was there with a group of my friends, he was there with a friend of his, and we ran into each other in more of a social, we were at a bar, we were in more of a social setting outside of the classroom, and we just had fun. It was the first time we even, I think, thought, oh wow, well maybe we should see if this might go somewhere besides just being friends. So we came back to class after the winter break in January, and we started dating. And we dated for, I think, about 2 years before we got married. So it was right there at the end of my college years that we met and actually started dating. But yeah, we've been married since 2000. So
that's a good track record.
Yeah.
So did he follow you to Oklahoma City then when you graduated?
He did, yes. He followed me to Oklahoma City, and he took a position. He was a business management graduate. He took a position with Penske Truck Leasing and started in their management training program. And probably for the first several years of our marriage, I kind of followed him in his career as he moved up in the ranks. So we stayed in Oklahoma City for 2 years, and then we went to Kansas City for 2 years, and then we came back to Tulsa. During that time, I really was following him, and sort of his career is what led us to different places. But while we were in Tulsa, a job opening came up at OSU's Tulsa campus in the marketing and communications department. So of course I applied. That's my dream job, to work for my my alma mater, and I got that position. And so I started as a communications specialist at OSU Tulsa in 2004. And I actually worked there for 7.5 years. And that was an amazing opportunity. I think early in my career, I started at the advertising agency, and then I had a couple of jobs here and there that were a little bit different. I worked for a short time at a community newspaper, and then I worked as a project coordinator for another position in Tulsa. But they were sort of short term, and I always knew that probably wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. But when I went to work at OSU Tulsa, I think that was the first time it just felt like, okay, this is where I need to be. It's not the journalism part that my degree is in, but it's so working on the public relations side and writing news releases and that sort of thing. It's of course similar. It takes the same skill set. But as soon as I started working for the university, I've got this passion for higher education, and I just knew that that's probably where I'm going to spend the rest of my career. And that was a terrific experience. I learned a lot from my mentor, my director there, and had a lot of great experiences. And then this position that I'm in now at Eastern Oklahoma State College opened up. And that was a director position of marketing and communications. And so of course that would be an opportunity for me to advance my career, but it would also be an opportunity for me to come home. We loved Tulsa, actually. We had a great time there, and both of us, we both did well professionally there. But when the opportunity came open to move back to this area and raise our family in this area, in the Quinton area where my family still live, and we jumped at that chance, and it's been a great move for us.
How did your husband feel about moving from the pretty urban areas to pretty not urban areas?
That's
to
pretty funny too, because
Quinton?
if I'm completely honest, he made the decision to move. He wanted to move down here. He has always lived in the city, grew up in Tulsa, always lived in a larger city. But when he would come to visit my family, he loved, the trees and the mountains and the lake. We actually live in the Stillwater area near Lake Eufaula, and that is a beautiful part of the state. And he loved being around the water and the trees and the hills of southeast Oklahoma. It's just a different landscape. And he could see the benefit of maybe raising our children in a smaller school, that around their family, my parents would be close by to help out whenever we needed them. So he actually convinced me to move back home, because I was, of course, one of those people that once I left my small town, I thought I would never go back. I wanted to live in the city and be able to go shopping or out to eat or wherever, whenever I wanted to. The convenience of living in a city, things to do and people to see. So it took a little convincing for me to want to move back to a rural area, but it's been great.
How long have you all been back?
We have been back since 2008. So,
Enough time to know
Yes.
that you're okay with it.
yeah.
So you live in the Stigler area,
Mhm.
and you work in Wilburton,
Yes.
and that's a little bit of a commute.
It
For,
is a-
for
it is a
40
drive.
minutes, 30 minutes?
It's about 40 minutes, 35 to 40 minutes. We live in Brooklyn, which is, our address is technically Stigler, but it's in the Brooklyn area in Haskell County. And that is where my family originally grew up. My parents originally grew up. They lived down in the part of Brooklyn where it's now covered up by Lake Eufaula. So once they built the dam, now you can't go see their home, where their home site used to be. So we have a history in that area for my family. So yes, I actually live there, and my kids go to Quinton schools because that's where I went to school, and where my husband now teaches. So he took a different career path. That's another story. So we drive from there to Quinton for our kids to go to school, and then I drive on up to Wilburton for my job here at Eastern Oklahoma State College.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably typical of rural Oklahoma or rural America, that you live, it's just a different, when I lived in Tulsa, my commute may have taken me 30 to 40 minutes anyway. I have the same commute, it's just drive time, geographically distance versus dealing with traffic. So it really hasn't changed that much when you think about, a lot of people say, wow, you have a 35-mile drive to work. Well, it's the same amount of time. It's just, I have a beautiful drive through Roberts State Park, Roberts Cave State Park, and all the beautiful hills and trees, so it's great for me.
That's true. That's true about urban versus
Mhm.
the difference in the idea of a commute.
I would be lying if I said if I didn't miss the convenience. Of course, where I live, to go to the grocery store is a 25, 30-minute drive. So, of course, you miss that convenience. But the trade-off is that my parents and my 93-year-old grandpa live, 2 minutes away. So I have aunts and uncles and cousins, and my children are being raised with their cousins, and they, so we have a lot of family time together, and that's important to us.
Yeah. So what does your husband teach?
My husband teaches social studies at Quinton High School. He, after, I believe, about 14 years in the business industry, he decided that he was going to go back to school and follow his love of teaching, which is what he originally wanted to do all those years ago, and was probably advised by a few people that teachers don't really make that much money, so business is the way to go. And he did well. He was successful in the business world, but that was not his true passion. So he decided to go back as an adult and get his teaching degree in history, and he's also since earned a master's degree in American Studies, and he loves teaching. It's been a great career move for him, and now that we're both in education, I just feel like we have that connection there, that we're both passionate about education and want to help others learn or earn a degree, whatever.
Do you think that there's still this sort of idea, or people that are telling students in this area, don't go to 4-year school, you need to go to 2, or you're already set up for failure if you think you can come from this area and go to bigger school, as the experience you had?
Right. Well, it's really interesting because now, of course, I had my experience as a high school student, but now I work for a 2-year community college, so I can really see both sides of that. And I think it depends on the individual student. I don't think there are people that are still telling kids, don't do this or don't do that, this is what you need to do. I think it's more of a family choice based on affordability or based on what that student's capabilities are.
Mm-hmm.
Some students academically need to start at a community college, and there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it's an affordable option for students, especially in the rural areas that we live in. It's an affordable option for them. They're not all as blessed as I was when I went to school to have parents that have prepared and saved to pay for that. So if they can come to a 2-year community college and get a good quality education and save some money at the same time before they go to a 4-year university, then it's all the better.
Mm-hmm. Do you see maybe more students than for example, the 3 that you graduated with that ended up in a 4? Is that sort of a similar ratio, you think, of what you see coming out of, for example, Clinton High School?
No, I think it is higher. Maybe not depending on whether they start and where they finish.
Right.
I think the overall percentage of students that are going on to earn a college degree is higher, which is a good thing. So not everyone is going to have the same experience that I had, of course. So whether they go to a 2-year community college and then go on, or if they go straight to a 4-year university, as long as they're going and seeking out a higher education, I'm thrilled that they are doing that. And I think that there's even a lot of other opportunities that I've learned, of course, since I've been in my career, that there are career tech opportunities, and not everybody has to have a college degree. If they want to go learn, a trade, that's wonderful too. That's as long as they're finding something that they're passionate about, that makes them happy, that they can find work in. I think that's wonderful. Because we've definitely learned, my husband and I have learned, of course, that just because you have a management degree and you're successful in business doesn't actually mean that you're fulfilled, or that you're happy, or that you're doing what you love. So even if you're taking a significant pay cut to teach at high school because that's what you love and that's what you're passionate about, then I'm happy that he did that and made that choice.
Well, so you mentioned that you go and sometimes you have the opportunity to talk to high school students sort of about how they make that choice. And you mentioned a few things that you tell them, and maybe what you just said is the bulk of that. But I wonder if you do have advice for students that maybe were like yourself, that they were graduating and trying to really think and sort of had this idea of where they wanted to be, or is there advice, having come out the other side of that from this area and coming back into it, that you have for students, or that you could have told yourself when you were in high school?
I think the main thing is not to be scared. If you believe in yourself that you can do it, then you can. Because I think people can accomplish a lot more than they originally thought they could if they just dive into the situation and try it and experience it. Because if you're sitting on the sidelines and you're scared and you just are not sure and don't want to make a decision because you don't know what the outcome is going to be, that's no way to live life. So I think I would just tell those students to put yourself out there. If you come from a small school like I did and you go out and visit a large university like Oklahoma State, of course you're going to feel intimidated. Of course there's going to be a learning curve, but you can do it. I was not a stellar student in high school. Out of I told you we had 33 in my class that graduated. Well, I was ranked 5th, so I'm not even valedictorian or salutatorian or anything like that. But it was my goal, and I was determined that I wanted to go get my degree and do something that I love, and nothing was going to stop me. Sure, there were some bumps along the way. There are always going to be that, but I think if you're determined to succeed, you will.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything else about your time at OSU that you want to talk about? I'm trying to think if there's a couple of things we sort of mentioned before we got started, and I'm I think we covered them, but maybe, I'm not sure if in as great detail as you were interested in.
I think as far as my degree, and because again, in the career that I'm in, I hear a lot of people talk about the value of a college degree is going down, it's not as important as it used to be, and that sort of thing. But I look back at where I started with just knowing that I love to write and I wanted to write, and finding a degree program that fit that, and then going and seeking out opportunities, whether it was a student worker at the Akali or an internship opportunity. All throughout, from that point, all throughout my career, all these years later, I'm still doing what I love. And it may not be exactly what my degree choice is. The journalism and broadcasting degree doesn't even exist at OSU anymore. It's now strategic communications, which is a result of the changes in the industry. But I'm still doing basically that same thing. I'm not writing for a newspaper, but I'm writing for an organization, or I'm handling overseeing the creative work for the college and helping promote the college. And that's what strategic communications is all about, whether you're writing or you're filming or you're doing PR work or whatever it is, you're basically telling the story. So to look back all these years and know that that's what I wanted to start out doing, is to find a way to tell a story. And I'm still doing that. And I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful for everything I've learned at OSU. I'm grateful for the opportunities that have been provided because of my degree. And I can't wait for my own kids to go to OSU someday and have that same experience.
Well, it sounds like you're getting them used to campus.
Yes,
so.
They are. They have been going since they were little bitty. They visited campus several times. Since they're legacies, they are part of the legacy program at OSU. So they have attended Grandparent University several times, and they've done, my daughter was part of the Vet Med program 1 year and part of food science 1 year. And my son has done agribusiness, architecture, and aviation. So he got to go up in a plane and fly in a plane with one of the OSU pilots. That's amazing. Yeah, they've grown up orange and probably will continue to be. And if they want to start here at Eastern and then go to OSU, I'd be thrilled with that as well. But yeah, I hope they go to OSU at some point in their college education.
I do too. I think that was about all the area I wanted to cover. Was there other things you wanted to talk about?
There was one other thing I thought of later that I didn't mention. During my time in Tulsa, when I worked at OSU Tulsa,
Yeah.
I made the decision to go back to school and earn my master's degree. And it was of course a wonderful opportunity because I was right there on campus, but that was an interesting time because my husband and I were both working full time, and my son was 2 and my daughter was 4 months old. And I went to my husband and said, hey, I think I want to go to graduate school. And he was actually very supportive of that. He didn't think I was crazy to try to take that on with everything else we had going on with 2 little ones and work. But that was a very fulfilling experience. Graduate school is a lot different than your undergraduate degree. So once it's just, that experience was so different for me and so eye-opening because you go to class and you're taking the courses that are in your area that you're really interested in, that you're already working in, you already have a career in, or you already have some experience in. So it's not like you're going and taking your basic education courses again. You're in your element, so to speak. So that was a really great experience to go to class with other professionals in the Tulsa area that were in my same career field, and learn from professors like Dr. Jamie Fullerton and Lori McKinnon. That they were just wonderful. And so working on campus and then going to class at night was interesting experience, and there was a lot of sleepless nights, and there's a lot of times that I don't remember much during that time, sleep deprivation and stress, but it was a great experience. So I actually earned my master's degree in 2008 from OSU as well.
Got it. Well, I noticed the 2 diplomas.
Yes. So my master's degree is in mass communication. So just continued on with the communication field, and I love it. One thing I have learned too in my career is that if you're going to be involved in marketing, and if you're going to sell a product or if you're going to sell a service, it would be very helpful if you could sell a product that you believe in, because not everybody is so fortunate to do that. And so that's why I feel like I've just found this wonderful place, because I believe in education. I can see what it's done for me personally, and so to be able to sell that to other people and to promote the value of a college education to people in Southeast Oklahoma that were just like me, it's pretty satisfying.
Do you often see students that you help encourage to stay here or go out and pursue education? Do you often see them come back? Because you had that inner turmoil as well. You thought, once I leave Quentin, I'm never coming back.
Right. I think probably a little bit of both. I see students that have gone to school and come back to raise their family in the same community, just like I did. And then I've seen others that live far away and make their family and their career outside of southeastern Oklahoma, and that's okay too. My brother actually did that. I mentioned that he was an OSU graduate. He lived in New York for several years, and now for the past 3 years he's lived in London. So, my baby brother, who grew up in Quentin, Oklahoma, is living and working in London, and that's amazing to me. But again, I'm telling his story now. It wouldn't have been for his education. He wouldn't be able to do that if he didn't have the education and the degree that he has from OSU to go on and have those job opportunities. So he's out there seeing the world, and I think that's amazing too.
Pretty cool. All right. You feel good?
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so. I think I've hopefully covered most of it.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I'll clarify, because I think I can infer it, but just to make sure, you have 2 kids.
I do.
And they're elementary school age now.
Yeah. Well, my son is 13, so he's in the 7th grade.
In 7th grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. His name is Matthew, and then my daughter Ella is in 5th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Quentin.
In Quentin.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I can't think of. The only other thing I didn't mention was Dr. Manzer. Do you know Dr. Manzer in the marketing department?
Not personally. Yeah.
I'll say that one of the toughest classes that I ever had at OSU was Dr. Lee Manzer, and I think he's been there for several years. But he was tough, but I feel like I learned probably more from his class than many of the others that I took. He had a way of teaching that I thought was so different. He told a lot of stories during his lecture, and not that that's uncommon, but what he would do is he would use those stories to illustrate a concept that he was trying to teach, and then it would show up on our tests. So if you didn't take notes or remember the story and the moral of the story that he was trying to tell, you pay for it on that test. So I had a couple of classes with Dr. Manzer in undergraduate, and then one class with him in my graduate program as well. And I knew when I saw that schedule pop up that it was Dr. Manzer, I thought, oh, this is going to be hard. And it was a challenge, even, 10 years later as an adult, working on my graduate degree, he was still tough, but I learned a lot from him, and he's I think, a really big asset to OSU.
That's good. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
It's been interesting.
Yeah, it's been fun to talk about OSU and all those years ago.